Hello everyone, it's Daniel here, bringing you 5 recommendations today for Overwatch fans. While Blizzard's latest shooter might be dominating our lives right now, it's nice to have a change of scenery every now and then and just check out a couple of other shooting environments. We've aimed to include a variety of shooters and different aesthetics and presentation styles for these games, just so that there's something for everyone, and we'll be linking particular aspects and similarities to Overwatch and what each game does differently as well as we go along the list. This list is in no particular order, so we hope you try them all out. Victory! First up, we have Paladins, Champions of the Realm from Hi-Rez Studios. 2016 can be described as the rise of the class-based hero shooter, and Paladins attempts to vary this up by combining it with a card-building hand system. You have 5 upgrades that you can equip on every character that are dealt to you by cards that you unlock for leveling up in the game. If this sounds a little daunting, then don't worry, because you also have some default hands that you can use at the start. You're not going to be immediately cast into this without some semblance of guidance. The cast of characters is as varied and as colourful as you would expect from a class-based hero shooter. And with some of their playstyles, you'll immediately see the similarities to something like Overwatch. Little Ruckus here, for instance, plays very similar to D.Va in regards that you are a bulky sort of tank that just peppers down the enemy. And it's so lovely to just be able to harass the enemy team in that way. Every character has their ultimate and a variety of abilities for you to play with. But one of the interesting departures from Overwatch is the scale of the maps. You actually have a mount to traverse the terrain, as the objectives spawn at different sections of the large-scale map. For instance, one round you might be capturing a control point on the left side, another round you might be over on the other end pushing a payload cart. You'll travel between the points through various rounds, and you'll get to explore the map in its entirety by the end of a match. And through my time with this game, I've grown quite fond of the gentle clopping against the grass. There's something very therapeutic about it. You'll have to sign up for the closed beta from Hi-Rez Studios' site, but Paladins does have that nice little perk that it is going to be free to play when it comes out. And free things are always good.
Oh, yeah, almost forgot why we stand on it. Well played.
Victory.
And speaking of free things, let's talk about Dirty Bomb. And I don't just mean an explosive in dire need of some Febreze. Dirty Bomb is a class-based FPS from Nexon. And don't let the modern military shooter look discourage you from this one. It has to be mentioned because one of the reasons Overwatch is so popular is that it is a breath of fresh air among shooters, because it's not a modern World War III simulator. Dirty Bomb might have that look going for it, but the class-based gameplay is actually quite interesting. For instance, if you choose to play a combat medic, your role actually isn't to shoot the other guys, but rather make sure your guys don't fall down permanently. Another little cool thing in Dirty Bomb as well is that you always have a chance to revive fallen teammates. They actually sort of just start wriggling on the ground and look as if they're in a tremendous amount of pain. I think Mercy would be proud of us.
Heroes never die.
The enemy team can finish other people off when they're on the ground in that state, but if you manage to get to them in time, you can get them back up in action. Unfortunately, I tend to die a lot, and I was not saved. You also have things like sentry support, you have sniper roles, and every class has that sort of defining characteristic of some element of support. Even the basic shooter dude, who basically just has an assault rifle, is the ammo dispenser for the team, which is just a very nice take on it that's quite refreshing. And that's the main reason we're recommending Dirty Bomb, because it is that interesting, fresh tweak of a modern military shooter that does deserve some mention, and it might just go under the radar because the Overwatch addiction never dies. Next up on the list, we have Battleborn from Gearbox. Battleborn might have swept under the radar for most, but it's a class-based hero shooter that should not be missed. It has a lot in line with MOBAs. So you actually play in lanes and you have waves of creeps. And the classes are as varied as you would find in something like Overwatch, but what really distinguishes Battleborn is the progression system. You level up in the battles, and instead of having to worry about gear like you would for most MOBAs, instead you pick one of 2 abilities and you spec your character a particular way based on that. It's really quite intuitive in that sense. There is additional gear that you might have to worry about that will spec your character one way, but you unlock it at a very steady pace. And one of the more interesting things about Battleborn is that it actually has a story mode. There is a co-op campaign in this game, which is quite interesting to see. You can't think of a lot of like MOBA or class-based hero shooters that have done that. And check out the animation on this. This is really not what I was expecting, but it's pretty cool that it's there, and I will take it. Unfortunately, the game does have a couple of issues. The community is suffering just a tad because of the weight of a game like Overwatch, and it can be a bit tricky to find a game dependent on the time of the day. You'll also have to unlock most of your characters by completing specific objectives in-game, which is just a little frustrating because you don't have the entire roster available and discourages that bit of experimentation, which is so great in Overwatch. But if you pick it up and get into a few games, it's definitely worth checking out. It's interesting to see how it pushes the MOBA qualities of the game more so than the class-based hero shooter. If you've ever looked at Overwatch and wanted something that focused more on the objective-based gameplay, then Battleborn is an interesting one to try out because it really does emphasize that. And the charm is really great. Like, this game has a strong sense of humor, which is really nice to see.
Technological superiority continues to pay dividends.
You can find Battleborn on Steam for $50 of your regional equivalent. Next up, we have Fistful of Frags. Do you enjoy playing McCree? Do you happen to enjoy a particular time of the day quite more so than any other? Then we're going to throw you in the direction of Fistful of Frags, an old-time western shooter with an emphasis on slower gunplay and accuracy. Fistful of Frags is in a very unique position among FPS because there's not a lot of slow gunplay games. Simply put, whenever we have a gun in a game, we run off like a madman and shoot down the other guys, but Fistful of Frags does away with this, bringing it back to a more western feel where your shots really matter. You have very little health, and you've got to take your time and land those headshots. And unfortunately for those reasons, I suck at the game. If you're a fan of how Overwatch does so many things differently compared to other shooters, then Fistful of Frags is one that we're going to point you in the direction of because there's really nothing quite like it. We don't have slow gunplay games. And it will help improve your abilities at something like Overwatch because there is that same emphasis on headshots. It may play at a completely different speed, but it's still going to help. It's a good sort of training game to fall back on. And the lovely thing is, this game is free on Steam. It's a source mod that you can just download and install, and there's still an active community for it. So if you're looking for a very different experience, give this one a go. If someone as terrible at the game as me can still have fun with this, then that's an endorsement right there. Lastly, when all else fails, Team Fortress 2 is still around. My god, it's actually close to a decade old. Jesus Christ, it's been around a while. But with good reason. Valve's hat-based shooter is sort of like the prototype for many of the class-based hero shooters that were seen in recent years. Simply put, a long time ago, there were only 9 classes in the world, and traces of its influence are riddled throughout games like Overwatch. If you look at Mercy, for instance, you can see the similarities to something like the Medic. If you look at Torbjorn, you can see the similarities to the Engineer. Even if you look at something like Tracer, you can see the similarities to things like the Scout, Junkrat to the Demo Man, and the list really goes on. There's so many conventions that Team Fortress 2 got right a very long time ago. The objective-based gameplay is still present in Team Fortress 2, but one of the nice change of paces that it has compared to Overwatch is that there's a much more relaxed atmosphere about just hopping on servers and playing pubs with your friends. If the competitive nature of Overwatch just beats down and wears away at your soul from time to time, then Team Fortress 2 is a nice change of pace. And it's free, which is great. Unless you start selling your soul for the hats. I got a jacket for my Engineer. It costs €12, but I got it. Jesus Christ, I'm losing control of my life. And those are just 5 games that we'll recommend for Overwatch fans. If you're looking for even more recommendations, can we point you in the direction of GameX.io? We only had time for 5 today, but once the site launches, you're going to be able to see even more recommendations based on your gaming history. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And if you'll excuse me, I'm back into the wallowing pits of despair that is my Overwatch addiction. Ha ha ha! My life's a mess.